Welcome to the Wednesday 13th of October meeting of the Transport and Environment Committee. Also members of the public who are present. I hope Neil Clark recovers from his illness. I'm taking over this meeting in his place. We've got a slim agenda. Can members focus the questions and responses on the agenda, and can we have 3 questions at a time before the officers respond? Thank you. Got to remind you that the meeting is being broadcast live, which is usual. Contributors are attending remotely, so they need to make sure that you use your microphones when speaking.
Chairman, can I just say that I think we're getting a bit of feedback, and I'm certainly struggling to hear you, so if we could wait a minute. So
who's the person who's feedback?
They're trying to sort it out now.
Yeah. Oh, good.
IT support is on hand.
Yeah.
We're getting the speaker as well, as you can hear. Yeah. There we go. Turn it down. It was as simple as that. Fantastic.
Good. So we'll move on to item 1. Is it your wish that the minutes are accepted as a true and correct record? All those in favour? Thank you. 2, apologies for absence. Hand over to Noel for this.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Neil Clark, and he's been substituted by Councillor Chris Barnfather. Also apologies from Councillor Turner with substitution by Councillor Bruce Lawton. We also have an apology from Councillor Dobson as well. Thank you.
So we move on to item 3 if there's no more apologies. Declarations of interest by members and officers. Do any members or officers present have disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Do any members or officers present have a private interests, or pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Mr. Councillor Hollis.
thank you, Chairman. I own property referred to in item 7. I own property nearby to where money's being spent, but I have no interest in the scheme at all, other than the fact I own property that directly adjoins it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. So we move on to the item 4, Highways Review Update. Before I hand over to Gary Wood to introduce the report and provide a presentation, I propose to move a recommendation set out on page 8 of the agenda pack. Number 1, considers and ratifies the update provided in the report, and I ask for a seconder.
Formally second, Chairman, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Is there any councillors who wish to speak to this? Oh, sorry, Derek.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to briefly introduce the report. This report just outlines that the Highways Review, member-led Highways Review, is continuing apace. Outlines that the review panel has had further meetings in September and October, with another meeting scheduled for next week, the 20th of October, and is steadily working through its overall scope. So the final meeting of the group, the panel, will also cover off, as well as outstanding maintenance issues, will also cover off verge and tree maintenance and our approach to managing and coordinating utility works. In the period since the last meeting, we've had the LGA peer review and colleagues from WSP, our external consultants, have also provided initial feedback to the panel as well. So the next piece of work will be to bring all of that work together and present it to committee for formal consideration in November. Happy to take any questions that members may have.
Are there any questions? We've got Councillor Hollis. Proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I begin, I just want to obviously send my best wishes to Councillor Clark, and obviously it's good to see we've got experience hand in with yourself, but
Thank you.
just sending the best recovery, and I think if that could be noted in the minutes, just so it'd be nice just to send that wishes. And going into the agenda item 4, so can I welcome the progress on the review, which is an acknowledgement of the failures of the previous Conservative-led administration. One of the failures of this panel is to properly admit the problems at the authority. Everybody knows that the state of our broken roads and pavements in Nottinghamshire are the worst in the country. I note that the chairman of the Health Committee yesterday, Dr. Keith Girling, not to be confused with Councillor Girling, boss of Nottingham University Hospital's maternity units, to resign. One of the reasons was because she alleged that she wouldn't acknowledge the problems at the trust. I said right at the start of this process that we need to acknowledge and admit the problems over a significant period of time with highways, but we've not. I refer explicitly to the use of ViaFix, which has created patched up roads that would embarrass a third world country. Despite repeated attempts to find out, we are no clearer to knowing how many times botched up potholes have been revisited by workers and the cost of Nottinghamshire County Council. You would have imagined that that would be the first thing we should have done. Paragraph 3 of the report refers to a website that the council claims to have set up. It is not a website. However, it is a page with a few links buried within the council's main website. At no point does it give residents the opportunity to engage in the process. It merely provides 3 links, one to the council motion that set up the panel, and updates from 15th of June and the 1st of September. Paragraph 3 is wholly inaccurate. If this council thinks that providing regular updates is 2 updates in 4 months, then I say you are paying lip service to the whole process. Paragraph 4 and 6 of the report deals with the use of external consultants and the LGA peer review, where a number of councillors, officers and stakeholders were interviewed. I took part in this review in good faith and as did some of my independent colleagues, both from the county and district councils. Matthew Lugg, the external consultant who carried interviews, was somewhat surprised when I informed him that you yourself, Mr. Chairman, the chairman referred in the Communities in Place Committee and leading officers that this authority claimed that it was government rules that meant this council allocated funding by length of roads, not usage of roads. Matthew did confirm that the nationally and government allocated this to authorities by method, but no rules or advice existed on the process for authorities to allocate the money in a similar way. This didn't surprise me when we haven't found no evidence whatsoever, and despite repeated requests to provide evidence, this council still has failed to do so. So, Mr. Chairman, I put it to you that you have been allocated monies to authorities based on false premise. This has led to places like Ashfield and Mansfield losing out on millions of pounds worth of highways funding. So for the 6th, 7th or 8th time of asking, can you provide evidence that the government advice is to allocate all highways funding via length of road, not usage of road? I put it to you that this misrepresentation has directly led to roads in North Nottinghamshire particularly being underinvested in compared to other more blue-leaning parts of the county. You may ask what relevance this has to the work of the review panel. It is absolutely relevant as one of the main reasons as to why this review is happening, as the lack of transparency over the appointment and supervision of subcontractors, the use of ViaFix and much more. You've not been honest about the casual issues that have led to the panel being set up, and it is first therefore I'm not confident that you have been honest with either of the external consultants nor the LGA review panel for the reasons of any outcomes will be nothing more than a sticking plaster to mask the significant issues, just like our casual use of Viafix. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilmot, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Councillor Ogle, for allowing me to speak on this issue. Yes, can I first of all welcome the work of the panel on the 20th of October, covered in paragraph 7, especially the investigation of your approach to managing and coordinating the utility works. We've all heard about the horror stories about roads being resurfaced one week and being dug up by the utility companies the next. Can you please outline to this committee the council's current approach that has existed since 2017? Are there any laws we can use to stop the wholesale vandalism of our roads by utility companies? And if there is, why have they not been implemented? And if there are no laws, what does this panel hope to achieve by investigating this situation? I also like to say that this highway review update report, there's very little information that's put forward on what's happening. I mean, I would like to know about how you're going to continue with the road inspections, improving those, and improving an improvement program and funding maintenance treatments. That's the repair techniques, and information gathering. How are you going to deliver that, and any policy changes agreed that this managed by the Transport and Environment Committee? What are we going to be talking about in the future? I'm absolutely at a loss of anything that's been put forward yet. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Barney. Councillor Garland.
Yeah, I just, sorry to cut in. I just want to refer to a couple of the comments made by Councillor Hollis in my capacity as Vice Chairman of the Health Scrutiny Committee. I, as a number of other members on the committee today, were at the Health Scrutiny yesterday, and the subject matter we were discussing was of the most serious and upsetting. It was a very difficult meeting, and I actually find it inappropriate for you to relate any comments made by Councillor Saddington to this subject matter or this meeting. We were talking about the most serious issues to do with mothers and the loss of babies, and I think it's inappropriate that you raise it in this context. Also, I'm speaking. Secondly, you referenced third world countries, which I also find deeply offensive. I've spent considerable time in the great and wonderful nations of both Kenya and Uganda. I don't know whether you would consider them to be third world, but I can assure you that they have excellent roads as well as some quite poor ones. And again, to relate the roads of Nottingham to their quite poor ones, I find deeply offensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Derek, would you like to come back on the questions that have been asked?
Certainly. So I think that the question that Councillor Wilmot asked was around Streetworks, and the committee and the council has recently adopted a revised approach to the management of Streetworks, which does give us greater influence over the works that utility companies and other organisations undertake on our roads. That's not to say that we have control over those works, but we do have more powers to both licence them and inspect those works in terms of quality and timescales, and also to influence to a much higher extent than we've previously been able issues such as traffic management and circulation when those works are taking place. So it'll be timely for the panel to reconsider our position on Streetworks and the management of Streetworks when it meets next on the 20th of October. And of course, recommendations that come out of the panel's consideration will then be brought back to this committee at its meeting in November, along with, to pick up your second point, the broader recommendations that come out of the review panel itself, which will cover all aspects of the terms of reference for the review panel, including maintenance works and road surface treatments as well.
Thank you, Derek. I'd just like to say that we acknowledge that there are improvements to be made, Councillor Hollis, which is why we're having a review. And we haven't, Councillor Wilmot, we haven't got to the stage of documenting many of the issues that you raised that you know that Derek didn't cover because we haven't got those recommendations yet. But I'll ask Councillor Gowland if you'd like to speak. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not really going to comment about the review as such because obviously we've not got the report, and I think my comments would be better served when I've got the information that's put before me, and I would hope that some of the questions that have been posed by members will be answered within the body of the report, you know, about the fixation, whether by you know, anybody about the length of road and whether that should be done, you know, in an area or not. You know, I mean, as I keep saying, Bassetlaw is one of the biggest districts within the county, and it should get the most money spent there, you know, full stop. The issue I've got is the website address that is in here and the information that's contained within it. I've checked it again just to make sure I'm right. And all it's got is a copy of the report that we've got before us. And I think that we need to learn from that. I think that if you're going to give us an update, there should have been something about what the committee has actually been doing, the working party, or even the working party minutes. What we've got basically is this report. And to be honest, as members have said, this report tells us nothing other than, well, they've been doing this and there'll be an update coming at the next, you know. So for me, if you're gonna put what it does say, which is a website updating on the progress, and actually there's no progress on it because it's this report. So if we're going to do a scrutiny, then it would be good if there would have been the actual minutes of the meeting that have sat, or any of the resolutions that have come, so we can watch them as we're going through. Basically, that's it. I eagerly, like many, await the report.
Can we move on to ask Councillor Lawton if he'd like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. A couple of things really. One is with reference to utilities and operating on the highway. You may or may not be aware that we've now put in place a licensing process, and part and parcel of the funding which comes through from the licensing will be employing, or if not already employ, inspectors to inspect the work which is carried out on the highway, and to also improve the interrelationship between VIA and the way the utilities operate on the highway, to try and reduce the amount of digging up new tarmac as far as that's concerned, John, and that is just in the process of bedding itself in as we're moving across. So we are well aware of the issues. It's a long-standing problem that we have on the highway, and it's something that we've actually addressed. I don't take Councillor Hollis's criticism at all well, as far as the previous administration put in an extra £20 million over 4 years to try and improve the highways, something actually that Councillor Hollis's group voted against on 4 separate occasions at budgets. So I really can't see where he thinks he's coming from. I do take objection, Councillor Hollis, actually, that that you're peddling these pre-prepared questions which have been prepared by your researchers when you can't even update them to realise the fact that the chairman of the committee has in fact changed, within the actual body of your question. So it really brings the whole rationale for your questioning into disrepute. And with reference to the funding for different areas, he is well aware, as we are all, that the funding formula it dates back many years, in fact, to the revenue support grant and the actual formulation of funding which comes through from central government as far as district and boroughs is concerned, and is apportioned on the length of road, and that is the way the funding is allocated as far as this council is concerned. And I think, Councillor Hollis, before you criticise I'm speaking now, I didn't butt in when you were speaking, Councillor, before you criticise the Highways Review update, could I suggest that you improve your attendance of that committee before you go down that route? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm disappointed that Councillor Hollis, as the Ashfield Independent Rep on the review, is clearly not reporting back to his group and to you, Councillor Wilmot, on what that review is doing, because one of the previous meetings, it was discussed that one of the potential outcomes to the review may be to produce a 3-year programme of work instead of a 1-year programme, which may in turn help with the utilities to plan their works in line with ours, and that may improve the issue that you've just raised. So maybe talking within your group and talking to those who are on the working group may prevent you asking questions that have already been answered. Thank you.
Derek, would you like to come back and respond to anything that Councillor Guilfoyle said?
Thank you for the question. It certainly, if members have got concerns about the extent to which we've been able to update members and the public around the website, then that's something that we can certainly take a look at with a view to improving the range of information that we've put on there.
Good. So the recommendation set out on page 8 has been
Chairman, I just wish to make a
considers. So
point
we'll
of
consider and ratify the update provided in the report. So we're going to the vote. All those in favour?
Chairman, I just wish to make a standing order. If that's okay.
Standing order.
A point of order. Sorry. Just personal clarification. Just a number of comments were made about some of the points I made, Mr. Chairman, and some of the responses, particularly by Councillor Lawton, Councillor Barney, were incorrect. If Councillor Barney wants to insinuate that road safety isn't a priority of this council, then shame on him. Councillor Lawton suggested that we, in fact, allocate money by length of road, and I repeat to Councillor Lawton that we have asked 6 or 7 times.
It's more than the point of order.
A point of order.
We're putting it to the vote now, Councillor Hollis.
If I may finish one sentence.
You've had your point of order, and you were going
6 or
further
7
than that.
times we've asked for information that Bruce hasn't provided.
So that's something that you need to take up with the officers afterwards. So I appreciate you might have an issue. Take up with the officers afterwards.
Don't make incorrect statements.
Thank you very much. So could I just have you show of hands again, just for the record? Thank you. All those for, all those against. Any abstentions? 2. Thank you. Item 5, the Highways Winter Service Report. Before I hand over to introduce this report, I propose the recommendation set out on page 15 of the agenda pack. It endorses the procedures and communications arrangements set out in this report, which will ensure that Nottinghamshire's Highway Winter Service is fully prepared to meet the challenges of the forthcoming winter season. And could I have a seconder? I propose this. Could I have a seconder, please?
Formally second, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So hand over to Martin Carriffin. Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the report that we bring every time about this year, which details our preparations for the forthcoming winter period. I don't intend to go into the full contents of the report, but there's a couple of items I'd like to draw your attention to. So the first one is on page 3, paragraph 20, where we discuss the amount of grit we have available. You'll note we have 17,000 tonnes available, which is 7,000 more than the Code of Practice, best practice document. So that puts us in a good position and good resilience of stocks for the coming winter. And the other point is on it's paragraph 26, page 4, which talks about our communications. I'd just like to let members know that we'll shortly be distributing the winter service leaflet. That deals with a variety of winter emergencies and also winter service, flooding, things of that sort of ilk. We'll be distributing that shortly. That leaflet contains facts, figures, and details of out-of-hours numbers if you need them. That's all I've got to say about that. I could just direct members to the recommendation, which is on page 5 of the report.
Thank you, Martin. So I'll take any questions, and we've already got Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, welcome the report. It's always a good reminder for both ourselves and members of the public that we're coming near the winter period. I know the issue around roads, and I've got a number of roads there. I would love them to go and great, but I understand the particular circumstances around the decision making on it. But what I would say is, particularly at this point, vaccination centres, which are going to, are key at the moment. And I know it's not specifically mentioned, and I just wondered what arrangements, if any, are going to be made around the vaccination centres that we have throughout the county, because I think they should, in particular, be mapped and should be ensured that they're gritted, and also, and I know it's probably not in some cases our responsibility, but if they've got a car park, even if we could go into the car parks, it were possible, and just so that people during this period, I know because I'm one of the marshals locally, we are dealing with a lot of the elderly, and that will be the same right up to Christmas and during that winter period. So I just hope that we could sort of bear that in mind and sort of look at the were we gritting and include that.
Councillor Hollis.
No, I think it's a really good point to make, actually, and certainly topical with everything that's going off. But I just referred to paragraph 25, which states there's 1,405 county council grit bins located across the county. It states that these bins are placed at highways junctions where there is a steep gradient or in heavily pedestrian traffic areas, predominantly on traffic roads, not subject to a routine precautionary gritting. A simple question is, how often are these locations reviewed and how are they reviewed? Because I can certainly cite examples, Farmview Road, Coxmoor Estate, or a lot of new build across any parts of the county, but certainly in Ashfield District we can evidence where these criterias are being there, but we aren't being, after a review, aren't getting a yellow grit bin. And I bring up new build estates as one example because it seems to have fallen through the cracks. These tend to be the people that leave at 6 a.m, the commuters. They aren't on the gritting route because gritting routes are often prioritised by bus routes, which don't go through new build estates. And then as a result, they haven't got these yellow grit bins. And that's led to, members will be aware that we use our divisional funds to shoulder the burden, and so do parish councils shoulder the burden with the blue grit bins. I'd rather that money be spent for community groups rather than having to fill in the gaps where I can see a policy like this that should really be doing the job that my divisional fund's having to step in. A funny story about Councillor Martin and I, we both, I either have grit delivered to my home address by the county council and then we distribute it, or we go and fetch it from Billsthorpe. Councillor Martin's 4x4 was that loaded with grit, it collapsed in the middle of the road. So we're doing all we can. But I see this as there. So, just to reiterate the question, how often are these sites reviewed, and how are they reviewed? Do we go out in person? Is it desktop? And I think that's probably the very. I'll leave it at that, really. But thank you,
Councillor Hollis. Councillor Lawton, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just no problem coming back to me, Martin. But my comment really is one of. Is to say thank you really to the team, because while we're tucked up in bed at night, they're out there working in all weathers to ensure that the roads are kept open, particularly the responsibility that VIA has to maintain the access and egress to many of the isolated villages in Nottinghamshire. Without the level of support that you're giving them as far as gritting concerned, they would not be able to get in or out of their villages in some cases, like villages like Norrell, Maplebeck, for example. And had you not taken on the opportunity or the responsibility of ensuring that those main arteries are kept open for them, they would be completely cut off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Martin, would you like to come back on those first questions?
Chairman, if it's okay, I'll pick up on the Councillor Guilford's question, and then Martin will pick up on Councillor Hollis's question. So, Councillor Guilford, in terms of vaccination question, it's a really good vaccination centres, really good question. We actually did quite a lot of work with VIA colleagues last winter around gritting for vaccination centres, because of course it was an issue then too. Many of them, if not Yes, indeed, I remember. Many of them, if not the majority of them, are on gritted routes anyway. And in actuality, a lot of the issues around safe access to vaccination centres is around the kind of car parks themselves, which we don't grit. The vaccination centres and the NHS have put in place arrangements for ensuring safe pedestrian access and car access to their sites. But what we have got is an arrangement where we're able, through VIA, to support any particular issues that might emerge during a period of difficult or tricky weather. So going into this winter, it's a useful reminder for us to double check those arrangements, but we're pretty confident at this stage that we've got appropriate arrangements in place to support the continuing operation of vaccination centres from an access perspective. Martin.
Councillor Barnfather.
Chairman, is it possible to have an answer to my question before we move on, or? I understand Martin was giving me.
Well, Martin's coming back on it first, isn't he? Right.
Certainly. Yep. Our teams will be going out into the field regularly to fill the bins up, so we'll be able to observe whether they're used or whether they're not used. Also, the physical constraints of the sites, the things that we use to determine whether a grit bin should be there or not, they don't change. You know, gradients, the proximity of traffic, things like that. So, yeah, we would do that as a dynamic process as we go through the winter, see whether the thing was used or not. But generally, I'd have to say once these things are placed in the field, they very seldom then get brought back in again. And regarding the points you made about grit bin requests that have been refused, I'm not in a position to be able to comment about each individual one, but if you let me know where those locations are, I'll make inquiries and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Through the chair, if it'd be possible to maybe provide you with some example sites, I'm sure the members could possibly do the same, of where there is steep gradients, possibly meeting all this criteria, but then it's not got a yellow grit bin, or like in a lot of the cases where we've requested one and it's still failed. It'd probably be helpful for us to understand constructively why it's failed compared to other sites. Because
Councillor Hollis, can you give Martin the information after the meeting?
Yeah,
because I think you've got your response, and Martin's prepared to work with you. Yeah. So that'd be good if you can do that.
I would just encourage you to bear in mind this is not a council meeting. This is a committee where it is conversational, and I think all members will be important. We're discussing grit bins, and it's back and forth.
Yeah, but you two are going to get together after the meeting anyway, so it's appropriate.
Well, yeah, I think all the members might be.
So we can ask Councillor Barnfather if he wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Higton for his reassurance in relation to the vaccination centres. I think that was a very pertinent point raised by Councillor Guilfoyle, and it's good to know that we're already addressing it. And of course, it's not merely the responsibility of this authority, which is the Highways Authority, but the district councils also have a role to play. And I'm well aware that in my own district, when we get really inclement weather, the district councils will actually put their own transport out with salted grit for areas which don't fall directly under the remit of the Highways Authority, such as private car parks, which may be adjacent to a vaccination centre, which sort of moves on really that in para 25 we refer to 1,405 grit bins, and Councillor Hollis did allude to the fact that there are other grit bins above and beyond that 1,405. So the 1,405 refers, I am assuming, to yellow grit bins as provided by the Highways Authority for use on the highway itself or the pavement which forms part of the highway. And it's always good if there are any members of the public listening in to perhaps remind them that it is for use on the public highway. I'm sure we all see as local members the people who turn up with their wheelbarrow when there is inclement weather and fill their wheelbarrow and trundle down to their own drives, and they have a lovely clear salted driveway for the duration of the bad weather, and we have an empty grit bin. But beyond the 1,405 yellow grit bins, of course, we also have the blue bins, as already been alluded to, which are provided usually by elected members through their councillors' divisional fund, and certainly in all of my 5 parishes, I've funded those over the course of the years based on the local knowledge of residents who have requested such a bin because there is a particular issue which may not meet the criteria of this authority, but poses a problem for residents in some sort of small areas. And above and beyond what the County Council provides in the yellow bins and the blue bins through the CDF, certainly in my own district, in Gedling Borough Council, the District Council also provides red grit bins for areas which are identified by local ward members of the District Council. So I suspect that figure of 1,405 is greatly surpassed by the number of grit bins which are located across all of our areas, that combination of highways, Councillors Divisional Fund and District Council. And I'd just like to pick up really on Councillor Lawton's point. I think the fact that we are so well prepared with 17,000 tonnes available. We obviously built the new barns a few years ago. I think over the last few years we have very successfully dealt with the inclement weather conditions. We are well prepared for anything that should be thrown at us this winter. Hopefully it won't be necessary, but I'd like to thank officers for the work that they do on this.
So thank you to Councillor Barnfather. And Councillor Gowland, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I can see that you obviously had processes in place last year to deal with COVID. I just wondered, because I've heard stuff in the media, whether you've lost any staff due to the HGV drivers issues, because these are obviously highly skilled people with particular training, but are you at full complement of staff at the moment?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think the Highway Winter Service programme is a very, very important issue, and needs to be investigated to make sure we've got all the possible options for supporting the many people or roads that need help. It's important that we get it right to ensure we keep our county moving during the winter months. I remember the problem in 2017 in Hucknall, where Hucknall was at a standstill on Boxing Day. There were many lessons we've clearly learned from that and the public relations problem that followed. At no point, however, in the report is the fact included that the County Council are actually responsible for pedestrianised areas in our town centres. Paragraph 28 of the report covers part of the statutory duties under Section 150 of the Highways Act 1980. Our town centres took a massive hit during successive COVID-19 lockdowns, and we need to do everything possible to support traders and encourage safe shopping. Unfortunately, many of our pedestrianised areas resembled ice rinks during the snow and ice. For example, in Hucknall, Kirkby and Sutton town centres were barely gritted at all last year by the County Council. Ashfield District Council actually bailed out the County Council last year, yet again, sending teams out to make our town centres safe. What guarantees can you give us today that our town centres will be safe to shop, eat and drink this winter, as this is covered by the report? The other issue that I just want to ask you about is the steep gradients, the roads that have got really steep gradients. I just wondered if you have got a list of those. I know it would be a monumental task, but when the situation arises about steep gradients in roads, very often, certainly in my ward, I had two real problems with Grasmere Close and Belvoy Street in Hucknall, which have really steep gradients, and they were not gritted at the right time, and it took quite a lot of time to sort it out. I just wondered if you have got a programme to sort that kind of programme out, and the out of hours contact numbers, make sure that it's put out, to everybody, so that they can ring up and make some sort of put questions to you to make sure that you know that where the problems are. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wilmot. Doug, would you like to respond first?
Thank you, Chairman. In response to Councillor Gowland's question about HGV drivers for winter maintenance service, yes, we have seen some pressure on our HGV drivers. I think a lot of people have currently. We have actively encouraged people to stay within us. We have looked again at how to retain our staff in that respect. In terms of the winter service, we, as you may well be aware, we have a seasonal team that do the grass cutting in the summer and they move on to winter maintenance in the winter period. They are fully up to complement to do the normal routes, but we do have a standby rota. And in fact, all of our HGV qualified drivers are trained to do winter maintenance. So we have a number of avenues we can go on to bring in additional, either whether it's day staff, moving them to night staff, etc. So we feel we have contingency measures in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Martin, would you like to respond?
Yes, certainly. And one thing I would say is we may not necessarily have responsibility for all the pedestrianised areas you may be observing. So that could be one issue. Also, the fact is that when we're encountering periods of particularly inclement weather, there's a finite amount of resources we can deploy. So if weather conditions do persist, then we will do some strategic footway gritting, but it has to be within what we can do and what the availability of resource we have at our disposal. Regarding your questions around the gradients, there is. We did have some issues around Gedling, and there are some arrangements in place for in those locations around that were particularly on bus routes that were particularly bad. Unfortunately, around some particular roads that may not fulfil our gritting criteria and are steep, unfortunately, it's a matter of resources. We have to, and it's proportionality and risk assessment. Where can we deploy our resources to make sure that we can deliver the greatest benefit for the travelling public? And I'm not familiar with the locations that you're discussing there, but that could well be the case. That could be why they aren't gritted.
Thank you, Martin. We've gone to Councillor Adams now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just to echo really Councillor Barfather and Councillor Lawton's point about the fantastic service and the very difficult tasks, and also the annual reminder, which may help to remind everyone that once the snow's on the ground, the grit is ineffective. So if we have snow on the ground, there's no point in getting the gritters out at that point. It's too late. So just to say that that and I think that early intervention that you guys do to ensure that happens is fantastic. Just to highlight the point around the town centres, Councillor Wilmot. Yeah, I mean, I would probably suggest maybe speaking to your highways manager about and find out which of the routes that are gritted specifically within the area that you're talking about, just to highlight the point to ensure that you know where and when and what we're responsible for. Because, like we found with adopted and unadopted roads, the things that you think are maintained by the highways department, turn out not to be in some cases. What was the final thing I was going to say? Yes, just one thing I'd like to I think it's worth probably highlighting is the comms strategy around Gritter Twitter and all the rest of it. And if we could maybe talk about the things that we're doing to ensure that everybody's aware of the process and what's happening when we are and how we're notifying people, what mediums we're using. I think that'd just be useful for the committee to be aware of exactly how we're going about that. But once again, thank you ever so much. Thank you.
Councillor Adams. Councillor Wilmot, will you talk to the officers afterwards, please? Is there any response to anything, Derek? Yeah.
Just one kind of final point. Members may not be aware that on the council's website is a detailed map of all of our gritting routes, both our top priority routes and other routes as well. And we'd be more than happy with any members to discuss the intricacies of those gritting routes and to see what we can do to support aspirations around kind of additional gritting runs and so on. It's also worth saying that in particular in respect of pedestrianised areas in town centres, we do quite a lot of work with our district and borough partners as well, in partnership during periods of difficult weather to ensure that there is access to things like shops and businesses and so on, even where we don't have direct responsibility for gritting.
Well, thank you, Derek. So the recommendation is set out on page 15. It's been proposed, so I propose to move to the vote. Can we have all those people for, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Excellent. So we move to item 6, responses to petitions presented to the chairman of the council. Before I hand over to Sean Parks to introduce the report, I'll propose the recommendation as set out on page 20 of the agenda pack, that the committee approves the proposed actions and that lead petitioners be informed accordingly and that the outcomes be reported to full council. Have I a seconder?
Formally second, reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments? Sure.
Thank you, Chairman. As stated, the purpose of this report is for committee to consider the proposed responses to the issues raised in the petitions that have been presented to various county councils as detailed within the report. And the individual responses to those requests are detailed within the body of the report. I would just like to point out, obviously, on some of these, there is further work required on them to enable consideration of the requests. And so the lead petitioner and the local members will be kept updated on any conclusions of this work.
Sean, any questions or comments? No, so we'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry.
Well, I wasn't quite quick enough off the mark. I just wanted to bring up the issue of the parking around the school on the third, the petition C. I mean, I can't pretend I know the local area, but I have a similar situation around one of my schools. And I think the sort of, oh, well, there's nothing we can do is a bit of a negative response, because we know these schools cause a lot of grief to residents. And I think that possibly the council need to take a look at doing something more, maybe making no parking or maybe even no driving zones close to the schools, has been done in some other parts of the country. So I appreciate that. I know it's not appropriate for me to comment on this particular issue because it's not a school I know, but I think that maybe we should be looking more broadly at this as a sort of policy matter. Thank you.
Sean, do you want to come back on that?
I think probably the best thing to do is obviously take that away and consider it effectively in the wider scheme of things.
Yeah, that's good, that suggestion. Yes, Councillor Guilfoyle.
Chairman, I wasn't going to speak, but I will just on that bit. One of the problems that we've got is that we build schools and we have a tendency not to build car parks because we say, look, at the end of the day, we're here to maximise the money what we've got. And that is one of the problems, is that staff, and most schools, staff travel. You know, schools in my locality, people come from, a lot of them don't live in the locality. They'll travel from Lincoln, they'll travel from Nottingham, they travel from all over to go to teach in the schools. So there is automatically, when you've built a new school with very little parking, there's automatically going to be displacement onto streets. So it's going to cause a problem. So for me, you know, it's either we grasp the nettle in the sense that when we build a new school, we can't alter the schools that we've got currently built, that when we build new schools, we actually get enough land, and usually we own it, but what we do is we also provide sufficient parking for staff. That would take away that particular issue. What we can't then do, and it becomes a total problem, is parents who travel, who live just a few yards down the road, get in the car to drop the kids off on the way to work. And it is the bane of, I'm sure, every member's life here, around every primary school, because it's not so much a secondary problem, it's a primary school problem. And, you know, if anybody can come up with the silver bullet, I'm sure both officers and members would be welcome. And we've tried all sorts. A drop off so that they can drop the kids off. They just pull in, drop the kids off and move off. Tried that. Additional zigzags rather than double yellow lines. I would say put additional zigzags so that the vehicle that we've got can enforce it. Because if you have double yellow lines, you can't get a traffic warden there all the time. But the vehicle can cover a number of schools during that period. So I think there are some things that you can do, but it's all about, unfortunately, at the end of the day, you end up penalising the parent because they go and park up and they get a ticket. As I said earlier, if you can come up with a silver bullet to resolve that problem and copyright it, I'm sure you'll make a load of money.
Thanks, Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Hollis, did you wish to speak? No. Right. Thank you very much. Derek, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, just to pick up on that question then around access to schools and staff and parent parking. I think you make a good point, Councillor Guilfoyle. We've been looking for the silver bullet and have struggled to identify it yet. What I would say is that in respect of new schools, we do actually build sufficient staff parking into the specification and the design for all of our new schools. And if I think about the schools that we've built in the last few years, that they all incorporate sufficient staff car park. It's actually a planning requirement these days. I think that a much more vexed issue is parent access, particularly around drop-off and pick-up. It's very difficult, if not impossible, for us to pick that up within the design of the and community aspirations to move to a more sustainable modes of travel, because of course we all know that in some cases parents travel quite short distances by car to drop children off and pick them up. So there's a kind of inbuilt tension there. The previous administration did undertake a review of road safety and access arrangements outside schools and went into those issues in quite some detail. And one of the things that came out of that was the decision to purchase an additional camera car, which is now in operation. But of course, we have 2 vehicles, I think, and 300 plus schools. So that's going to be 3 vehicles. So that's going to be still a significant ask. Thank you, Councillor Lawton. So it's something that we can keep under review, particularly in respect of our designs around new schools, because there are some things we can do to help manage parental access when we've got that opportunity. I think you correctly identified that the much more substantial issue is existing schools that are in places where population density can be quite an issue. It's something that we continue to look at, but it may be that we recirculate for members the outcomes of the previous administration's review, because there was quite a bit of detail in that I think might be useful and interesting for members.
Thank you, Derek. So I think we can go to the vote now. Move quickly on to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 7, Active Travel Fund and its Tranche 2 infrastructure programme. I move the recommendation that is on page 27 of the please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Formally second, reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. As committee may remember, June's Highway Programme report updated committee on the progress of the delivery of the Potential Active Travel Fund Tranche 2 programme, and committee approved the next steps, which included further reporting back to this committee for further approvals. This report, therefore, is that report providing further updates on the programme delivery and also seeking approval for the schemes to be delivered as part of the programme as detailed in paragraphs 6 and 7 of the report. And as Chairman has just mentioned, the recommendations are set out pages 26 to 27 of the agenda pack.
Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, and thanks, Sean, for the report. As members will see in paragraph 6, it covers the schemes that are recommended for approval. This includes a cycleway footway scheme on high pavement Sutton in Ashfield at a cost of £535,000. I think just to kick off the kind of conversation about this is, it's clear that high pavement's got an issue. You know, we've got a very large secondary school there. It's close to the town centre. Speeding is an issue there, just like it is everywhere else, but more so because of the fact that there's a heavy number of school children there. Members will note with the map that's been provided in this report, it seems to be a hell of a lot of money on something that potentially, and it's potentially being spent on stuff that isn't solving problems. I mean, members will have seen that there's been cycleways put into nowhere in other parts of the county, and we seemingly are doing that here as well. Independents in Ashfield called for action to be taken on high pavement, and I welcome the fact that it's been looked at. I just kind of feel that what's been provided is solving a problem that doesn't exist. You know, we want to be tackling speeding on high pavement, not installing cycleways. And I'll draw members' attention to the circle in the top right where it says Forest Street Station Road. There's a circle that says existing crossing to be upgraded to a toucan crossing. Those works have actually already taken place. It took about 2.5 weeks, probably 10, 15, 20 men at least per day on site. I've lived there all my life. There's many of the properties shadowed out are owned by me or my family in that location. I travel through that junction every single day. I've been on the Highways Committee at this county council for nearly a decade. I'm not sure I understand the difference between a pedestrian crossing and a toucan crossing, but what I can tell people is that crossing is being used in exactly the same way as it was before. Just round the corner, part of the same scheme, we've installed road humps in lay-bys. It just seems to me to be a bit of a waste of money and a bit of history in the Ashfield area. I mean, when the county council was flush with a lot of money, schemes like this, we just felt like we had to get the money out of the door. So I represent the Carsick estate. There's road humps on every single street in the estate, not because they needed to be, because we needed to spend the money. And I genuinely feel constructive criticism here that much of this money that we've received from the government is being spent simply because we have to be. And there's no getting about the fact that we want money to be spent in Ashfield. 535,000 is the reason I'll be putting my hand up for this. My call is I'd much rather have seen that 535,000 actually spent on solving a problem, not on installing cycleways that literally lead to nowhere. On this same site, the district council is spending hundreds of thousands of pounds connecting Kingsmill Res to other parts of the district, to the parks here. Why haven't these cycleways been linked with ours that we're installing? And I use the junction here. I lived for 5 years off the Twitchell. I still use that most weeks, but I used to use that every day. That is a really dangerous junction. Yet all we're doing is installing extra curbage and things. The speeding needed to be solved. And for the school kids who use that, yes, we want to be encouraging them to cycle, but there's no infrastructure around it past what's on this map. And I think that's the real danger. And the theme of it is really just calling on officers and lead members in this to not just spend this money because we have to get it out of the door, like we've done in the past in the Carsick estate, like what we've just done in other parts of Nottinghamshire, installing cycleways to nothing. This is the next problem. I welcome the money being spent, I really do. I just feel that we could have probably got better bang for his buck on this particular location, Chairman, but thank you for listening to me.
Well, seriously, if it's as dangerous as that, you need to take it to a safety officer, Councillor Hollis, but we'll get a response in a minute. Councillor Garland, would you like to speak?
Thank you. So first of all, I'd just like to say, picking up on your point, which I'm basically going to agree with, but if there's a pedestrian crossing and it's being cycled across, I think it's essential it's turned into a toucan crossing if appropriate, because obviously it leads to a lot of conflict and it's illegal to be cycling on the pavement. So where people are cycling on the pavement, that's probably the place to look at putting a cycleway. But the general point, I mean, I have to agree, and I know I've made this point, and I am one of the very few people who actually objected to the Regatta Way route, not because I object to having a cycleway down Regatta Way, absolutely not, it's great, but it's not where we need it. So what I'd like to ask is whether it be possible for the council to consider coming up with a list of, so I appreciate we're here where we are where we are because the money was sent and we had to spend it in no time, and this is a ridiculous way of managing things from the central government, but this is where we are. But can we possibly come up with a list of priority areas where we can see there is an issue, where we need to join up these cycleways and where we can basically see cyclists on the pavements, where we know this is where they're going for refuge, and target those areas for schemes that will then be shovel ready next time money's dumped our way to be spent rapidly, because this is not really the way to be solving this problem, I don't think. Thank you.
We've got Councillor Adams next.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, just to refer to a couple of points. I mean, I do question the solving a problem issue, because, you know, this creating these cycle lanes enables a rollout of what will be an extensive cycle network. I mean, I know in some points you look at these things now and you may see it as bit by bit, but that's how you've got to do these things, to enable the possibility of creating a Nottinghamshire-wide cycle network where it's completely joined up. Cycle networks enable people to move more people in less space. Now, you were talking about the busyness of a stretch of road, Councillor Hollis, and how dangerous you felt that was. Well, there's, you know, it will enable some people to switch from cars to cycles, potentially. When cycle lanes are launched, they do enable that process. There's an obvious environmental connection here with cycle lanes. You know, there's no question that we need to reduce the use of cars where we possibly can, and an opportunity to put people on bikes. You know, I would, Burton Joyce, I would love it if I had a road wide enough to fit a cycle lane on it, to be honest. But we don't have that ability where we are. You know, I have regular emails from residents requesting, you know, that we do that because of the safety of children getting to and from school. And so, you know, I think, you know, I obviously the point about the road being safety, like, I'll refer back to that again. You know, this effectively enables people to cycle more safely, which for me wins straight away. And secondly, like I said before, also enables to take people off and out of their cars. So to say it's not solving a problem, I do completely disagree with that. And I would say, you know, watch this space. We need to connect these dots together, and all these dots will make a line, and eventually you know, we will have that complete network across Nottinghamshire where people can traverse from one end of the county to the other. And I very much personally look forward to that.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Sean, would you like to respond?
Yeah, it's probably worth answering the two questions together, to be honest, because it is all tied. You may recall at the last committee I presented at regarding the local cycle walking infrastructure plan, because I think this is where the networks tie up, to be honest. So for example, we have to date worked with district councils, including members, on identifying networks across the whole of the county and within the separate districts. As you may recall, the next steps for that is actually to consult on that, which effectively with the wider public, which I think would help allay some of Councillor Gowland's concerns about we're not prioritising the certain locations. The proposal is that from that piece of work, we will have, exactly as you requested, those lists of schemes that we can then prioritise for developing or for designing up to the next level should funding come forward, to try and get over as constantly firefighting with the bidding process. But we will need to secure revenue funding to do that. That's the only issue, and we currently don't have budgets to do that. In terms of obviously specific ones in Ashfield, we did work with the district in terms of identifying these when we spoke to the local county councillors as well, prior to actually even submitting the bid, or sorry, subsequent to submitting the bid. I will correct myself on that one. And obviously they have raised issues. We've tried to design those in. That will form part of the network. One of the priorities or criteria, I should say, for securing this funding was that they had to be on our local cycle walking infrastructure plan network, strategic network, so they will tie up. And the proposal is obviously they will ultimately tie into where the town deal funded schemes in Ashfield, which we've also obviously been liaising with, if possible, to tie those in where they meet our strategic networks. Now, obviously, when we do that consultation, if they're not on there, it may well be something that you want to prioritise and highlight to us. But obviously, we're happy to come and have further conversations with your local members about that if you want us to.
Sean, Derek, would you like to top off, or are you happy with that? Right, thank you very much. So we Guilfoyle first.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, mine is really about the joining up. You know, for me, you know, I would like to see the links made and see them mapped out. in the sense, and in particular linked to such as the Sustrans, which is a safe cycle route, through woodlands, linking up various parts, and it's already there, and would want to see how communities can be linked up to that, because clearly, a lot of these are on busy roads, and ideally, what you want to do is get people into a safer area. So my view would be is that we should be probably starting from the Sustran links where they are through the countryside, and then building out. But I'd like to see that link. Let's get a map up of this is a network, and then break that down into, because firm believer, we're not going to do it overnight. But if there's a 10-year plan that members can accept that this is how we're going to do it piecemeal, that when bids like this come forward, we actually go, well, we've got it. It's here. We know for £2 million we can do this, this, and this, and that's where it's forming from. Whereas at the moment, as people have said, it looks haphazard. It looks, a little bit here, a little bit there. Or you can ride down here on your bike safely, but then when you go to the rest of the way, you're back into danger zone. And if you're wanting to take children out on the bike, clearly you want to make sure that it's safe all the way, not just part of the way. So I understand. We've only got so much money, we can only do so many things. But let's do a 10-year plan and say this is how long it will take us, and we know that this will cost, whether it be 50, 60, 70 million, and this is what, if we got the money, this is what it is, and let's tell the government that, and if they're coming out, if Boris wants us all on his bike, let him fund it. It's 70 million quid for around here. Give us a 70 million because we know where we're going to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Wilmot, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, can I first of all welcome this report? Anything to encourage residents to leave their cars at home and walk and cycle is absolutely essential. And I do really think that more money should be spent on that issue because, again, thank you. And anything, of course, to encourage anybody to walk and cycle. If you remember at the last meeting of the full council, Councillor Elizabeth Williamson, who represents Brinsley and Greasley, brought this topic up in a constituency speech at full council on the 23rd of September. She raised the urgent need for a cycle lane between the mini roundabout in Hucknall down to the long lane to Watnall, and the extreme dangers faced by cyclists around there. Now, I use that road very, very a real lot, tremendous amount, and the speeding cars that go down there, I'm talking about 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour because it goes over the M1 motorway, of course, and of course there is no way any cyclist is safe along that road at all. It's absolutely, it is a horrendous situation because, as I say, I do use that road quite a lot. She's asked me to if we can give her an assurance that a cycle lane will be considered here, as that she called at the full council. If there's to be a third tranche of the active travel fund, as using this road in Hucknall for cyclists is untenable at the moment, and they put their lives at risk and into their own hands as well. Can I just thank Councillor Adams and Guilfoyle for talking about the joined up approach. We have, and I welcome all the cycling routes that's been put in. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But all of a sudden, you've got a family going on a lovely cycle road, and it suddenly veers to the right, and it's onto the road, and then the youngsters that are in the families are at risk. So more money needs to be put into a joined up approach to make sure. Wouldn't it be nice to say, put in an advert, 2 mile cycle lane available to everyone, to all your families? Come along to it. There's one in this area, there's one in that area, there's one in another area. But at the present time, it doesn't happen. It's unfortunate, but that's the situation. And as I say, it's very stressful for families if they're suddenly on a lovely stretch of land with a nice area to get safe area, and then it goes on to the main road. That's all I've got to say, Chairman. And the work this council's done on this issue is excellent.
Right, thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Barney, would you like to speak?
Very, very quickly indeed. Just to say, I thought your comments, Councillor Guilfoyle, were excellent, and I'd like to wholeheartedly endorse them. And without making it entirely parochial, in the south of the city, we've got a large development, Fair and Pastures, coming forward, and I'm constantly asked about cycleways and connectivity with the Fair and Pastures estate, and then to the wider southern points of the villages of Eastleek and Gotham. And I just wonder if that plan, and also Councillor Wilmot endorsed and Mike Adams endorsed, I think we're moving in that direction, but if it could be expedited so that opportunities aren't lost, particularly with these large urban conurbation developments which are coming into play now, because there is an opportunity to get some really significant South Nottinghamshire cycleways put into place if we can move fast. So thank you.
Sean, would you like to come back on any of this when you're ready?
Yeah, sorry if I didn't make it clear enough to point. The purpose of the local cycle walking infrastructure plan is exactly what Councillor Guilfoyle described, to be honest. It is a short, medium and long-term plans, what you want to deliver for all of those networks. Just regarding the Hucknall to Watnall route, I'll ask a colleague to get in touch with Councillor Williams just so they can discuss that and make sure it is included, because effectively whenever we get any requests for cycle routes, we're happy to assess them and put them in with that plan to see what their priority should be, and we do have a methodology for doing that. So, we're happy to do it if you've got any suggestions to take them on board.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lawton, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Sean. You undersell yourself. You do, really do. I mean, you just got to read through the report. You're talking, whilst estimated cost of the scheme means it will not be delivered as part of the ATF tranche 2. You're obviously planning that for future development. Then you go on to say a proposed cycle hub requires ongoing revenue budgets to support running costs and maintenance. You're obviously planning ongoing work in that area. Then you're talking about Randall Way. Should such a scheme be identified, be deliverable within funding constraints, prepared for future funding, and long may that continue, and long may you put bids in on behalf of the people of Nottingham. I just make a point that both the two main schemes in this report are not Conservative areas. They are Labour and Ashfield Independent areas. I mean, it amuses me, Tom. You amuse me by one hand you're complaining about the fact you're not getting enough revenue budget. We're spending £500,000 in your area, and then you don't want it. Then you're not happy with it. So it just amuses me that is a response. But we will continue down this route, irrespective of your comments. So those are the only few points. They don't need your response, Sean. And you also, I like your brevity. You're absolutely spot on. Thank you.
Councillor Garland, can you come back quickly?
Yeah, first of all, pretty sure that's not a Labour area if you're talking about Regatta Way. I happen to use it because I cycle all the time. No. And I understand what you're saying, Sean. I'm speaking to you today about bike routes. I'm not in any way criticising you. I just want to say one more time, this is an emergency. I'm really sorry to keep banging on. We have a climate emergency. 10 years is too long. Putting in, a nice routes that are going to join up sometime in the future is not the solution. People get off the bikes at the junctions and then they don't get back on again. They will not cycle tomorrow if they have to get off the junctions. It's the junctions we need to be focusing on. 90% of the routes are fine. It's that 10% that mean people do not cycle. That's where the efforts need to go. And I know you know that. You don't need me to tell that. You know that. But he needs the backup to be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garland. Councillor Guilfoyle, can you come back quickly?
Yeah, mine is just and I mentioned it at last committee and I'll keep mentioning it, new developments. And that we need in the initial planning process to have cycle lanes put into all the new developments that are happening. And if we don't crack that, then, the government is just going to keep throwing money at it. And we need to do that. And that needs to be in every local plan, that when you build a new estate, you build the cycle lanes in. And that is the way forward.
I think we all agree with that, Councillor Guilfoyle, actually. I think, yeah. So I think we've had all the people that want to speak. So the recommendations are pages 26 and 27. Can we take it to the vote? Can we show your hands now, please? So that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So, Penny, can you switch your microphone off, please? Yeah. Right. Item 8, 50 miles per hour speed limit order, Normanton on the Wells and Plumtree. I'm going to propose to move the recommendation set out on page 36 of your agenda, and I will ask Doug Coates to present the report. You seconded it, Mike, if you would.
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of the report is to consider the objections received in respect of the speed limit order for Cockgrove Road, Normanton, the Wolds and Plumtree and Church Hill Plumtree for a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit order. The report provides details of the background to the request and the consultations that have been undertaking. There are 3 outstanding objections, details of which are provided in the report together with the responses. The proposals as outlined are supported by the local member, Councillor Richard Butler. Thank you.
So is there any response or any questions about this? I don't think there are. Yes, Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I do normally make it a matter of principle not to speak on issues that don't affect areas that the Ashfield Independents speak on, but now we're an independent group that represent more than just Ashfield. I think we should maybe make a start. Thank you. I agree. But no, I just wanted to draw members' attention to paragraph 22. Expected cost £4,000. It seems to me that we're getting a hell of a lot of bang for a buck, if I can steal a phrase from the last item, to achieving road safety. And I certainly am concerned to read the objections to see that maybe the speed limit would be lower, because I'm certainly aware of areas in Ashfield where we've lowered the speed limit to 50, then months later gone back and lowered it to 40 at the same cost. You know, so I'd hope that all matters have been considered in this. But my main point...
I'd hope so, Councillor Hollis, because all the local councillors are happy with it. That's why there's nobody speaking. But
my main point to, and I read that in the report, but I thank you for clarifying it as well. But my main point is just to really refer back to maybe previous items where a considerable amount of more money, hundreds of thousands of pounds more, have been spent on something that potentially, like in this agenda item, had a cheaper solution. And money could have been spent more effectively. But overall, I welcome the agenda item, and it's good to be seeing road safety being taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't think that needs a response, so we can go straight to the vote on that. All those in favour? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. So we move on to item 9, a similar item. Various roads in Cropwell Bishop, prohibition of waiting traffic regulation order. I propose the recommendation set out on 46, and is there a seconder?
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second, reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So I would ask Doug if he will present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. So the purpose of the report is to consider the objections received in respect of the traffic regulation order for a prohibition of waiting in various roads in Cropwell Bishop. Details are contained within the report that gives the background to this and the request that was put forward, together with the consultations that have taken place. There are 11 outstanding objections which are detailed in the report, together with the responses to those, and the local member, Councillor Neil Clark, has expressed his support for the proposals as set out in this report. Thank you.
Are there any people who wish to speak on this? Any councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Garland.
Just like to really be grateful for the introduction to chicaning parking, because I think it's a really good way to slow traffic.
Thank you. So that's just a comment. So is there any other comments? If there's Councillor Lawton. No, sorry. Right, jumping the gun. So let's move to the vote now. All those in favour. So it is unanimous. Thank you. Various roads in Mapley, prohibition of waiting traffic regulation order. I propose the recommendation, which is set out on page 59 of your agenda. And is there a seconder?
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second, reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, for seconding. I ask Doug to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the purpose of the report to consider the objections received in respect of the traffic regulation order for the prohibition of weighting of the number of roads in the Mapperley area. Details of the background to this and the link to the Gedling Country Park and the parking issues that have been experienced in those local roads are provided within the report, together with details of the consultations that have taken place. There are, following the revision following the first consultation, 8 objections outstanding. Councillor Michael Payne, as the local member, fully supports the revised proposals, and no comments were received from Councillor Pauline Alling.
Thank you, Doug. Are there any comments? If there are not, we'll move straight to the vote. Yeah, all those in favour? That's unanimous. So we move to the work programme. I propose the recommendation as set out on page 66 of your agenda and ask for a seconder.
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second, reserve the right to speak.
I mean, just to welcome, as we always do, it's a dynamic work programme. We're in regular dialogue with committee members and the chairman about other items. So we could take.
Derek, do you want to say anything? Proceed.
Impact on this committee's budget. Can this be brought forward to the meeting in the 17th of November?
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Would Councillor Hollis like to speak?
I fully agree with Councillor Wilmot. Obviously, we've had a number of questions about the Gedling Access Road. I think it's quite topical that we speak about it earlier. My second addition that I'd certainly like to see included in the work programme is our out-of-hours service. I mean, members all know that this service is there to really report stuff that's can't wait till the next working day. I've had reasons to call them on multiple occasions. These staff refuse to identify where they're located, but clearly don't live anywhere near Nottinghamshire. Because when I talk about Leamington, they thought I was talking about Leamington Spa. They thought Sutton Ashfield was either in Nottingham city centre or London. And you'll appreciate that when members want, I mean, I was ringing up effectively the member of the public line. We want to know that these issues are being taken seriously. And to me, the out-of-hours service isn't potentially doing the job that you'd expect of it, Chairman, and certainly me as a member as well. So potentially reviewing how the out-of-hours service works and potentially its pitfalls and exactly how it's contracted. Thank you.
Derek, would you like to come back? Sorry, it's you, Adrian. No. Yeah, Derek, right.
Certainly. So as far as Councillor Wilmot, the Gedling Access Road is concerned, we're due to take an update report to the next meeting of the Finance Committee, which I think is on the 22nd of November. So that's a full report on the Gedling Access Road will be taken to that committee then. And as far as out of hours highways support and services are concerned, we can certainly either bring a separate report or include it in a forthcoming report so that members can understand how we and VIA deliver that service.
Derek,
I was asking for it to be brought on its own as a work item.
Can we all show hands to whether we're against this? For or against, please? For.
So
unanimous.
Is that with the suggested additions of the Gedling Access Road and the
on board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usual practice is for it to be noted that it's going to be included in the work programme, because currently we're voting on the work programme that's here. I've asked for 2 additions. So are those going to be included in the work programmes?
So as we always do, we take those on board and we try and schedule them in with all the other work that's coming forward. And as we've responded, the Gedling Access Road is already on track to go to a committee and this committee too. So yes, I believe we've commented on both of those.
It needs. So thank you all for attending, and I declare the meeting closed. Would we stop the broadcast, please?